This is CBS Eye on the World. I'm John Batchelor. New World Report. Russia in Latin America. Russian in the New World. Since Cuba in the late 50s, early 60s turned to Russia, the Soviet Union. We watch now the trail of Russian procedures. Joseph, I start with Venezuela, but Nicaragua are closely linked. Much boasting these last weeks, visits by Moscow prior to the extreme violence in Ukraine. Do you expect those ties also to deepen now that Russia is being made into a pariah by European and American sources?
Yes, John, absolutely. I think this is a card that Vladimir Putin has that he will play in greater detail once he feels that he's exhausted some of his options in Ukraine or in Europe. And the card is specifically to help, and not just help, but catalyze these authoritarian leaders in Latin America to do the same thing that he's doing in Ukraine. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 and now the invasion of Ukraine today is a precept for what Nicolas Maduro wants to do against Colombia or against Guyana on his right and left side, his neighboring countries. It's a precept for what Daniel Ortega or the Ortega Murillo regime wants to do in Central America. These are essentially neo-imperialists, John. They look at the world and they look at the map and they don't respect those sovereign territories. They don't respect the lines on the map. They think that they can redraw the map and in doing so can change the international order. But let me point to one thing, John, real quick, because I've been paying very close attention, as everybody has, as the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And one of the things that caught me by surprise and maybe caught others was the level of military escalation, conventional military invasion that Vladimir Putin did in Ukraine. And we know that he has other techniques in his arsenal of asymmetric warfare. But what I think the Latin America component of that invasion comes in, and why I think we're not seeing his full military arsenal in Ukraine, is because I think he actually was expecting and anticipating sanctions and de-swifting and economic pressure. He knew this way long ago that this was going to be the most likely response from the West and the U.S. And one of the things he did, and I'm going back about 10 years now, was begin a non-dollar denominated international financial system along with China. And Latin America is one of the top regions to be able to link that new financial system. So I think what Vladimir Putin is calculating is that the de-swifting and the economic pressure is going to erode confidence in the international financial system and allow China to insert their new system, and starting with Latin America. Because as we mentioned before, as the foreign minister mentioned, China is already the top trade partner of 9 out of the 12 sovereign nations in South America. It's a top trade partner of most of the Caribbean. And this anti-dollar alliance that Russia and China have began about 2014, 2015 has a specific objective of basically eroding the U.S. dollar and increasing speculation and lack of confidence in the international financial system. I think that's the direction that this may go. And I think we have to pay very special attention, because I think that's what Vladimir Putin was doing in his ministers and his ambassadors in Latin America in the days leading up to the invasion of Ukraine.
Mr. Minister, I welcome your comments on Venezuela and Nicaragua, but the states that border your country, Brazil, in particular Argentina, and I believe you also mentioned Peru, and there is Bolivia as well, which is under a new president, Arce, who has long conversations with people sympathetic to Venezuela. Do you see an immediate threat from your neighboring countries in the southern part of South America with Russian interference, Ernesto?
Yes, definitely. Because now we have to think about the new kinds of threat. Probably we wouldn't see a classic war here in the region, but we see the interpenetration of organizations, of crime organizations that work across borders and work across borders to destabilize the governments and to foster politicians that they control. Currently, possibly the most powerful crime organization across Latin America is a Brazilian organization, the PCC, which is doesn't matter what the acronym stands for, but it's an organization that started in São Paulo, Brazil, which has had connections with political parties in Brazil but also is part of this region-wide scheme of, you never know, we're dealing with socialism, we're dealing with drug trafficking, we're dealing with terrorism. They kind of work together. One of the aspects is that this PCC now controls part of cocaine production in Bolivia. They do across the border drug trafficking through Brazil into Africa, into Europe. It's one of the main carrots of traffic now, but also from Venezuela to United States. So, yes, we should look at things not from the classic point of view of states, each one there with its own regime, and they don't interfere. And because they are interfering through different methods. And Russia is there always to strengthen the hand of these regimes and to weaken the hand of democratic regimes in the region, together with China. There are talks that Russia could have now the intention of establishing a naval base in Peru, which would give them access to the South Pacific. In Argentina, China has built some sort of space base, which Argentinians cannot enter, so they don't know what is going on there. From Venezuela, Russia has flown nuclear-armed airplanes over Venezuela back in 2018 when we were starting our administration in order to try to intimidate us. They couldn't, but anyway. So that's what's happening across the region. And just one word about Nicaragua. Nicaragua can destabilize not only itself, of course, but the Northern Triangle, which is so important to the United States. So Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. And that's happening. Honduras especially is under the threat of becoming another Nicaragua. And all those regimes are, they are not the classical dictatorships that you have a dictator and arrives and, okay, I'm a dictator. They manipulate democratic institutions. That's another of the aspects that we have to pay attention for and not look back at previous patterns of behavior.
And quickly, Joseph, just because we're going to turn to Brazil and the election cycle, the Russian presence anywhere in Latin America is now mightily suspect. Is there any country we haven't named, Bolivia, Peru, Argentina, Nicaragua, where you wonder about Russian interference or Russian presence? Any particular country, Joseph, that I've left out?
Well, I think two, and I'll briefly mention them. I think Colombia is very important. They're going through an election as well. They have an presidential election in May. There's been reports of Russian meddling or potential Russian interference in that election. And then the second country I would say is Mexico. Mexico is another big country alongside Brazil. And Vladimir Putin has been very aggressive at getting closer to the López Obrador government in Mexico, and I think somewhat successfully. So I think that that's two countries that perhaps we didn't discuss about, but they're U.S. allies or U.S. partners. But that doesn't mean that Russia isn't trying to reverse that relationship and put them more into their geopolitical orbit.
And the minister mentions Honduras. Is that also something to watch, Joseph? We just have a few seconds.
I do think that is definitely something to watch, especially as Xiomara Castro is now the new president of Honduras, and she has the same sympathies in political and geopolitical alignment as all the other ones that we've been mentioning.
Joseph Umair, Executive Director of Secure Free Society. Our special guest, Ernesto Araujo, former Foreign Minister of Brazil. We turn to Brazil next in the elections. I'm John Batchelor.
You're listening to CBS Eye on the World with John Batchelor.